It's not how you start, it's about how you finish. The problem is, how you start defines how you finish. Welcome here to the last topic of helping people in need, and it's exciting to be here at the end. It's sad in some ways, but last one, finishing well. So you've been working, I don't know if you've been picturing maybe someone in your mind that you've been working with or will work with or whatever. I don't know what you've built in your mind. We've received a lot of good instruction on how to counsel, how to work with someone, how to use homework, how to ask questions, and all these things. And I wonder how you're feeling about now. Some portions of it may be confusing, going over your head. Maybe you're catching all of it. I'm not even. You kind of have to put up your filter and get the things you need to. But I think that's the way it is with working with people. I take phone calls there at Fresh Start, and sometimes those first phone calls, you're just filtering lots of information. He said, she said, it's her problem, it's I have anger issues, moral issues, everything gets thrown at you. What do you do with all that? And I find that it's beneficial to ground, and I think there's been good exhortation already on that. What is it? Just grounding back in the truth. And we're looking at finishing well. The goal is not to work with clients for the rest of their lives as us as counselors. One-on-one, whatever that looks like. So how do we determine when they're ready to move on? What does that look like? So we're going to cover some of those things here today. Put up a table of contents. The only reason that speaker puts a table of contents in PowerPoint is just so you know when you need to wake up or bump the person next to you. When we get to point 4, that's when it is. The goal of this talk is just to give direction on working towards, moving towards the end of working with someone. Again, the goal is not to work. So we're going to talk about building a foundation. We're going to talk about what is success with a counselor. And then ongoing support. After working with someone, what then? We have Deeper Life. They work with people one-on-one. Fresh Start, we work with people one-on-one. Deeper Life, a couple weeks. Fresh Start, 8 months. Is 8 months enough to solve everyone's problems? I see heads shaking. We're going to find out. Okay, building a foundation for success. Thought of Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he." And just thought of vision as when we're working with someone. Vision is vitally important. From the beginning, both for the counselor, myself, where are we going? What should this look like? And then also for the counselee, what are they doing with me? They're there for you to fix their problems. A lot of people say anyways. So what does that look like? I believe that a counseling session or relationship will also perish if there's no vision. So vision's vitally important there. Some of you are probably familiar with the book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey, and I thought this habit was appropriate for this. Begin with the end in mind. Now, we're talking about finishing well, so bear with me. I'm talking about the beginning now. Remember the quote at the start. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But how you start defines how you finish. So begin with the end in mind. I think this is very important from session 1 that we're starting to build a plan, a database, if you will. What's going on? We've been talking about asking questions, gathering data, and trying to understand, put the puzzle pieces together. We heard some of that this week. Building, how serious is this? What does it look like? Building a plan for recovery. Define clear goals that you can accomplish, both as a counselor and the counselee, and for the counselee as well. Having them involved in that conversation. This is not something that is behind the scenes and you're just building alone, but this is an open conversation between the counselor and the counselee. What are our goals here? Find that very helpful. Just maybe even in the first couple sessions, sit down and what are your goals in sitting down with me? What are you trying to get from this? And you may get some good ones and you may get some bad ones that need to be worked and adjusted with. The third point there, it will be very difficult for you as a counselor to define goals that will be successful if you don't know what a victorious Christian life looks like yourself. I thought this was very important, is I'm sure you've experienced that in some ways or another, and the Bible speaks about the blind leading the blind. Don't let that be your case or my case. It's going to be very hard to chart a course for a counselee if you don't even know what that looks like. What should the end look like? What does victory look like? What does purity look like? Know what that looks like for yourself. I thought it was interesting. I've been reading through Mark here, and I put this point in there. It's not in your book, but realizing that as Jesus was working with his disciples, he had this group, and essentially he was leading a discipleship team there, doing some counseling, and there was a lot of things that went on in that group. But from the very beginning, I forget how many times it was in Mark that Jesus talked about the end. When I leave, this is what it should look like. When I leave, and I will leave. He talked about it multiple times through the book of Mark. So, begin with the end in mind. I find it helpful to liken this almost to, bear with me, not all analogy doesn't always fit everything, but a physical wound and a spiritual wound. And the Bible talks about wounds. These people that come in with baggage, with all sorts of issues. Wounds, things they're struggling with. What happens with a physical wound? Someone has a wound, they need a place of healing. So we take them to the hospital. In this case, maybe this is the biblical counseling session that we're talking about. They're coming in to you, a place of healing, deeper life, fresh start, whatever that looks like. Then we look at it and analyze it, and they say, what intensive care is needed? Maybe that wound needs surgery. Maybe it needs, in some people's wounds, if you can picture it, they've been festering for years and years of time. And here we're talking about past, and there's good instruction given on when do we talk about the past? What sins do we need to be bringing up if they haven't been repented of? So surgery, what intensive care needs to happen there? That's Jesus Christ. He's the surgeon. He's the one who's the healer. Again, it is not us. Don't put that pressure on yourself. That's a very slippery road. Jesus Christ, he's the intensive care. He's the one who provides that. We're a tool. Okay, the next thing is tools. What do they use for wounds? Well, there's all sorts of medications. Sometimes you need antibiotics. Remember, these wounds have been festering over years of time and been ripped open multiple times, and dad comes along and pokes it again and blows it open or whatever. Might need an antibiotic. Might need a painkiller. I shouldn't put the painkillers in there, I don't know. Those are the scriptures. And those are things, these are tools that us as counselors have. These are the greatest tools. And we talk a lot about resources and books, but I put scriptures in there. You can put other ones in there as well. But effective tools to use for helping the healing process. And then when surgery has happened, there's still a nursing process. There's cleaning, there's bandaging, there's rebandaging, there's pulling casts off, there's whatever that looks like. There's nursing that still needs to happen. And same for the spiritual wound. It doesn't mean that you come in here and we have people come in, it's like, well, I got this problem, can you fix it in 2 weeks? And no, there's a process, there's a journey. of healing a wound. And so I put in for spiritual wounds, that could be a spouse, that could be a brother, that could be other people in the church, that could look like accountability team, that could look like many different things. Some of those have been talked about. Then after that, a lot of times after someone exits a hospital, there's still rehab that needs to happen. Strengthening. When someone gets wounded or breaks a leg, it loses muscle over a period of time. It's the same thing with wounds. It doesn't mean that you come in and fix you all up and then in 2 weeks send you back out the door and you're just as strong as you were when you came in. It doesn't work that way. There's a process of healing and working with people. When you look at people coming in and that you're working with, we've talked about a lot of tools and been a lot of instruction given, but I'm just quick assessment, scope of damage. These are questions that people often ask when you're working with them. How much time is it going to take? Again, wounds generally take more time to heal than it took to create them. Think of a gash. Half a second to create it. Several weeks to heal. Broken leg. Split second to create it. A lot more time to heal. Extent of damage. Most people's wounds are not fresh, but have been festering over many years. It's one thing to work with someone and they come in and just yesterday someone spit in their face. But it's another thing to work with someone who's come in and that's been happening since they were young. Wounded. So keep that in mind. What's the extent of damage? This didn't happen yesterday. Think of the wound. If the wound happened yesterday, it heals a little faster. But if it happened years ago and it's not been healed, it takes a lot slower. Full restoration. Just like a physical wound, the goal is full healing and restoration. But this will not all be achieved in the counseling office. Keep the goal in mind. The goal is full healing and restoration, full strength, back to what it was, a godly man that is willing to put himself, willing to serve others, willing to be a disciple of Jesus, not just willing, but doing it. That's the goal. But is that all going to be achieved in 8 months or 2 weeks or a year or whatever that looks like? We know the answer to that. Okay. So what is success? It's just kind of a big question, and this is looking at not success of a counselor. I'm going to talk about that just briefly later, but I'm talking about success of working with someone. And Philippians chapter 3 talks about this in 12 through 16. Not as though I had already attained, either were already perfect, but I follow after, if that I may apprehend that for which also I am apprehended of Christ Jesus. So, not already perfect, we haven't attained this, but we're following after. Brethren, if I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before. So get this picture. This person with wounds, struggles, he's not perfect, he's challenged, but he's learning to forget the things which are behind, and not just looking at the things which are before, but reaching forth unto those things which are before, and then pressing toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Let us, therefore, as many as be perfect, be thus minded. And if in anything ye be otherwise minded, God shall reveal even this unto you. And that's another point, that a person who is pressing and successful, use that word, don't necessarily like to use that word in success in counseling, but this person, let us therefore as many as be perfect be thus minded. If in anything ye be otherwise minded, this person's not correct, something's off here. God shall reveal this even unto you, and he listens, and he grows, and he changes. Signs of growth. Nevertheless, whereunto we have already attained, let us walk by the same rule, and let us mind the same thing. Jesus Christ, disciples of Jesus. That's the goal. That's the focus. Remember, we're talking about finishing well here. There's a book I recommend. It is back there in the library. It's called The Gospel for Disordered Lives. And these next 6 points are taken out of this book. And recommend it. Cheaper on Amazon, by the way. It's back there in the library. What's that? Did that for your benefit. Very beneficial. So these next 6 points, when we're looking at working with someone and we get them to a certain point, what should we see in these people? Number one, the counselee's relationship with the Lord is improving. He hasn't reached a cap. He hasn't, when they first come in, that's one of probably the first things that you'll see is this damaged relationship. Something's going on. This means they're leaning into God instead of resisting Him. They're relying on His strength rather than struggling to handle things by themselves. Jesus has given them a new identity and a new person, which is grounded and founded in Jesus Christ, not of themselves. So the counselee's relationship with the Lord is improving. The counselee is growing in the areas that encourage them to seek help. Point number 2. He's pursuing goals of Christ-likeness. They're handling their past and looking forwards into the future. The past is not constantly coming up to bite them. They're not constantly going back to it. Signs of that, maybe it's not healed. So that's signs of maybe there's something still going on. But again, go back to Philippians. They're forgetting those things which are behind. Now, we talked about that. Not literally meaning wiping it from a memory. That's not what we're saying. But forgetting those things which are behind, leaving them in the past, and reaching towards and pressing towards the higher calling. And applying biblical truth properly. That's a key. Lots of people take scriptures and pull them in and skew them and versions, and there's all sorts of things. But we're talking about taking biblical truths, understanding them, and then applying them to their lives properly. These are what you should see in a person as you start looking at exiting. The counselee applies the scripture to areas not discussed. I think this is a great target or a great indication. I've been working with people who at times anything you pull from scriptures, they won't do anything on their own. Whatever you tell them, that's what they'll apply. That's it. And other people who take scriptures and they study and they're reading their Bibles in the morning and they come tell you, God showed me this morning. I just read this and I didn't know it was in the Bible. And it helped me and I'm changing something else. We didn't even talk about that. So he's able to identify new areas of temptation and sin. It's one thing it shows us, and that's important. It's not us that has to tell them that they're sinning, but he's identifying it, or she. And then they take and apply scripture to them. And they understand that sanctification is a lifestyle. It's not something that happens in 2 weeks, 8 months, but it is a lifestyle that we as disciples live and breathe and sleep. The counselee has genuinely repented and has a worldview large enough to respond to suffering. So he's showing growth towards being others-focused. And I think this is really important. You'll see this when you work with people. Generally, the focus is on themselves. Even if it's on their wife or their husband, that it's still on themselves. Don't be mistaken by that. But they're showing growth towards looking at other people. How can I serve? What does that look like? That last one shows desire to serve. Maybe that's in church. Maybe that's in wherever. I'm not talking about serving, I call it dirty service. This is not, oh, I want to go serve and be a minister. Oh, I want to go whatever, be a counselor. Or no, this is service and serving an old person, going and doing a project. We talked about some of those things. And they have a compassion for others. It's pretty self-explanatory. They love and they're expressing that. And a heart of service is driven out of compassion for others. The counselee understands how their struggles in behavior and motivation resulted in the need for counseling and is able to explain how to self-counsel in the future. So they're able to begin to work through issues on their own. Now, make a clarification. This doesn't mean that we're creating independent little, little cities here. This is not, we're not creating these little individuals that's like, well, I've got me and God and I don't need anyone else, and that's not what I'm saying here. But they're not so needy. You see people who come into your office and they can't solve a problem when even it's very simple and you've given them the tools. They don't take the steps to pray. They've talked about that some. Go pray first. Work through it before you even come to my office. Get as far as you can get. And then when you're on your last resort, then come to the office and we'll work through the rest and continue to teach. So they recognize when they need help before it becomes a crisis. And you've probably seen this where people, it's like, why did you wait so long? It would have been way easier to resolve if you came in when you started having the first thoughts and feelings or fight or whatever it was. So they're not waiting till it's a crisis. They're separated. Things have blown up. They've failed. Whatever. But they're able to recognize it, see that I'm heading down the wrong journey, and now I need to go seek help because I'm not sure what to do to get back on the path. Signs of growth. Last one there, the counselee is well connected to their local church congregation. This is where a, quote, normal discipling process will help our counselees continue to grow. They're not independent. They're not trying to hold things back, trying to hide. We've talked about confidentiality some. They're at the point where they're willing to be vulnerable with others, be vulnerable with those who care about them and love them. And they allow others to speak into their life to continue to assist them in that journey of growth. They have a heart of service, we talked about that, to the local body of Christ. That's the church that they're planted in there. That's the church, their home congregation. They have a heart of service. And that last one probably should come first. They're not resisting authority. You see a lot of people who come in, and that's one of those things that have to be worked in. Oh, my church and my ministers and my whoever. We got all these problems. And I'm not saying that's not discrediting that. Sometimes there are issues, but they're not resisting authority where they shouldn't be. But it's a heart of service and love to their local congregation. And they're willing to put themselves and to submit to that in a godly way and serve. Okay. So those are helpful things to be looking at as you look towards finishing with a client. But there are some cases that you're going to work with, probably have worked with already, that things are just not going well. Something's wrong. What do I do? Maybe I've been working with them for years and years, and what do we do? I'm first going to say a couple things. You can't force someone to change. Remember, whose responsibility is that? Are you the fixer? Are you the person? No. Someone else's job. God's. You can't force them to change or act appropriately. And I think that's a mistake that, especially new people like myself, it's like you just feel like surely there's a conversation. Surely if I say it the right way, I can kind of manipulate this person into, that's not what we're doing here. Take a step back and ask yourself, where is this headed? Is this person wanting to grow, desiring to grow? I think I have that on my next one. How to know if the case is not progressing well. One, the counselee doesn't desire to continue. That's pretty obvious. I'm done. I can't handle it anymore. Doesn't look hopeful for me. Whatever. I'm out. He's gone. Don't drive down the road and try to grab him off the street and pull him back. The counselee does not really want to change. There's been plenty of times we've worked with people who come in and they say they want to change, and they express, I want to grow, and I want to heal my marriage, or I want to get my children back, or I want to, whatever that looks like. But what their actions are showing, those 6 things that we just talked about, don't line up. They really don't want to change. They like their sin more than they want change, a godly life. Number 3, the counselee refuses to complete homework or other assignments. That's just an indicator of something that's going on. That's an indicator that maybe they don't want to change, or they're really not bought into this thing. Maybe they're here, we've worked with plenty of people like that, they're here to just prove something. Here to just, hey, I can say now that I've been to Fresh Start, it didn't work. Those guys were weird and crazy, and it doesn't work. I've tried it. The weird and crazy might be true. The other part isn't. How should we look at counseling failure? Whew. I think Dave looked over my shoulder as I was typing this and said, we don't. There's a conversation that ensued, and anyways. But I think this is something that we need to be willing to look at. Counselors should be faithful regardless of the outcome. Okay, that's number 1. You are God's servant, and you need to be faithful in that. It's not over till it's over. God is writing His story. There's a plan for that young man or young woman or marriage, whatever that is. You are to be faithful. As long as God has called you to work with that situation, be faithful, counselor. It can be frustrating and it can be hard, but be faithful. Never forsake the seeds that have been planted. It's something that's easy to forget. It's like, I've worked with this person for 2 years and he's still struggling and things are just going wrong, or they ended up in divorce. What about all the seeds that you have been planted? If you have been a faithful counselor, you have been a faithful servant of God, you have planted seeds. And God is the one who waters and brings the sunlight and all that. You just are a seed planter. And then this last one, don't miss an opportunity to analyze and grow in your weaknesses as a counselor. This is something that I think is very important, and it's very easy to excuse. I don't think there's enough accountability in biblical counselors. I think it's very easy to excuse, like, well, we're working with people in need, and so you know how they are. They were crazy. We gave them chances. We gave them opportunities. We tried, and we did all, we gave them the opportunity, and they didn't take it. It's in God's hands. And there is truth to a lot of that. But when do you look at yourself and say, is there areas that I need to grow? What if I wasn't compassionate enough? Or was I clear? Did we connect? Did he understand what I was even saying? I was speaking Spanish and he was speaking Dutch. There might be a problem there. Don't miss an opportunity. I think both quote, successful case and, quote, failed case is an opportunity for you as a counselor to learn. Don't miss the opportunity. Don't be too proud to look and say, you know what, there's some things I need to learn there. And I failed in areas. And maybe that requires you going back to that person and saying, hey, you know, I feel like I failed in some areas. I feel like I responded improperly to this situation or whatever. I thought of Matthew 17, and this is where the disciples had went out and they had this demon that they tried to cast out. And you remember what happened. This person had came to Jesus then. He said, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he's a lunatic and sore vexed, for oftentimes he falleth into the fire and often to the water. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they couldn't cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. And Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, why could not we cast him out? Here's the first step. I started asking questions. Something's different. Something's wrong here. And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. For verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. Howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. They learned something that day. And guess what? If they were too proud and was like, I don't know what to do with that. I guess he's just Jesus, and they would have missed an opportunity. And how many opportunities would they have missed in the future of situations just like that? So don't be too proud to look and to ask questions. And this is just great here, helping people in need. There's a lot of people with experience here, much more experience than what I have. I don't know how many years of experience around the room there is here. So ask questions, discuss with each other. Don't miss that opportunity. Okay, ongoing support. So we've been working with a person, and now we're starting to transition. Things have been going well. And we're seeing all those areas of growth. And we're saying, now my hands need to start being released from this person. As a counselor, you're working one-on-one. That's what I'm talking about. Hebrews 3 says, take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. But exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. And I was asked a question before I read that. Do we need more? Do we need each other? Do we need to be counseled? Do we need ongoing support? What is that? What does it look like? We need each other, as Dave said. And that is very important. Hebrews says that. Lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. It is deceiving. And I have the ability to be deceived. And so do you. Why does someone need continued support? That was one. Without each other, we can become easily deceived. Number two, we just take time to heal. Again, just because you're seeing all this growth and things are looking good, now I can just throw him back out in society, and he can go and find a job and get a wife and figure out how much money he's going to make and where he's going to live and what car he's going to buy and all those distractions of life. That doesn't mean you can just put him out there and he's going to be able to operate just like someone who doesn't have a wound or someone who's a godly disciple of Jesus. We need each other for the process of sanctification. Proverbs 24:17 says, iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. You need, I need, and your counselee needs continued support. And I'm not saying just continue to work with them until they find that, but I think there are things that us as counselors can be doing, working with the local congregation that they're in, working with a group of men, brothers, whatever that looks like, to help pass them off into hands that they can continue to work with. And what does that look like? Platforms for ongoing support. I've got 3 of them listed there. I'm sure there's probably more. But these are the ones. The one thing I want to say before this is support should not be a crutch for someone, but a platform for purposeful growth. I have seen where, and I'm sure you have too, where people are just, 3, 4 brethren are just kind of propping someone up. It's like they're just putting so much time and energy into him. And if we stopped working with him, what would he become? He's already sinning. He's not. It's not going well. There's no growth. It's a bad situation. But there's these people that are just kind of propping someone up a little bit. Sometimes I think the best thing to do in situations. Now, I'm speaking pretty broadly here, so don't make it personal to your situation unless it's applicable. Sometimes I think that it's best for us just to remove ourselves and say, there is no growth, this is not going well, and have a conversation with that man, that couple, whatever that looks like, and say, when you're ready, I'm here. We're here. We want to work with you. We love you. But when you're ready, we're not going to continue to schedule the meetings and you're late or you don't show up and on the story goes. Maybe it's time to just remove yourself, but make yourself available. We're praying for you. We love you. But we're going to let God continue just to do His work in your life. So take a step back and just assess the situation. Where are we heading with this thing? Where is it going? Okay. These platforms, probably some of you have been involved in that. One-on-one accountability. That is just, maybe 2 men meeting together, talking about moral purity or anger issues or finances or just one-on-ones. Hey, would you hold me accountable on this? Lots of different things. And that can be effective. I'm not discarding that. There's some things there that I put down. This should never be done without a foundation of trust. I think the word accountability just kind of has this, especially in a church setting, just kind of scary a little bit. It always looks like this kind of heavy-handed over here and just detectives trying to figure out, it's like, well, is this guy failing? Is he being vulnerable? So accountability should never be done without the foundation of trust and the ability to have open conversations. I think those two kind of go hand in hand. If you're not seeing the ability to have open conversations, maybe there is no trust. Look at that. Have a foundation of trust. You probably shouldn't be holding someone accountable if they don't trust you. That could be damaging. That could be, What about accountability with time, finances, and relationships? I think we often kind of become narrow-minded when we talk about accountability. And I'm thinking of someone you're working with coming out of situation and moving into support. It's easy to be like, well, the big thing is moral purity, pornography. He just really needs to be held accountable. What about other things? Finances, how he uses his time, relationships, anger issues, bitterness, and on and on. Accountability works in those types of things. Don't get too narrow-minded with accountability. Accountability should be targeted towards specific items that encourage them to seek help. Don't make it big, broad things that's just like, well, how you doing, brother? Good. It's a good life. Great. Okay. See you next week. Too broad. Make it targeted, specific. Should be led by someone who's mature. Probably that's all that needs said on that. Again, it goes back to one of the first points that I had said. Don't try to be leading someone if you don't even know where you're headed yourself. Be careful with that. That's all I'm saying. Use technology to beat technology. If you're in a group that uses technology, there's a lot of things that you can do. So it's like what we use technology and it's just open and we're just embracing it in its wholeness. That's not always the best thing. There is also technology, filters, browsers, phones, systems that you can use to help a person. Know that. Don't just be a detective. Church, it's another place of support, encouragement. This is a place for them to serve, to practice serving. And again, remember, we talked about, I don't know if it's an appropriate term for it, but just dirty service. Volunteering, leading songs, teaching Sunday school classes, things that may not necessarily be fun for the person, enjoyable, but this is a place for them to learn how to embrace and grow and learn things that maybe they don't necessarily enjoy. It's a place to practice being others focused. Brian mentioned that in one of his homework assignments. Like, do you go to church for yourself? Like, well, what can I get from this? How can I be refreshed? Can my battery be recharged? That's the things that we say, and it sounds all novel. Why do you go to church? It's a good place to practice being others focused. And then that submission to authority. Churches, kind of like marriages, challenge things like authority and submission. And it's a great place to look and to go back into and realize that you also make mistakes. And Mr. Counselee, when will you submit to authority? Who will you submit to? Is there anyone? Church is a good place to teach that and to grow in that. Discipleship team. I didn't put much on a slide. There's papers at the back of my outline there, and this is a document that we've wrote up at Fresh Start that kind of how we work with a discipleship team, accountability team, support team, whatever you want to call it. We work with these every day, and it's kind of one of the requirements in coming in to Fresh Start that you have a support team with you. Men, women that are willing to work alongside of you, to love alongside of you, to walk with you. And some of the purpose that we do that is because we know that after Fresh Start, again, if we just put them back into their normal situation, no help, no relationships, it's not probably going to go very well. And so this is one that I think as a church we need to learn to embrace and to look at. There's a lot of different models, and I'm not here to discuss. I think this could be an entire topic, really, is what does church discipleship look like? And the case study was great in just bringing out what that could look like. But a small group of men, a small group of women that are working together for mutual growth, not just, oh, we've got one person that's struggling, so let's form a group and let's all kind of work with him. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about groups that are willing and vulnerable and working towards mutual growth together. And so there's lots of different sections there, talking about group setup, goals for the team, misconceptions about accountability, the structure of accountability meetings, what that could look like. These are not things that you have to do. These are just ideas, things that people can take home. Make the team group successful, how to do that, and then there's some good questions there to consider for those of you that are working together. What if we as a church looked at discipleship in a different way? What if we looked at, this is not just for the people who really need it, the really bad people, whatever that means, but this is for all of us. And this is a little bit preventative even. We start dealing with situations as they come at us and they're in crisis. But what about reaching them before they even get there? And this is one of the ways. And I just want to say this as we talk about accountability groups, one-on-one accountability. This is a principle in leadership that we use in business and other places, but I think it applies here, that a group or an organization will never rise above its leaders. And so what does that look like for you? Who's leading? How is it being led? The organization or that group probably won't rise above its leaders. Okay, the last point there, this is where you wake up, is relapse. So it's inevitable. Relapse is inevitable. You've been working with someone for a period of time. Maybe it's while you're still working with him. Maybe it's after you've sent him off to accountability groups, discipleship. He's got support, all that. But he fails. And he's down in the dumps again, or she. What do we do? What does that look like? It's encouraging when they're doing well. But we have to prepare. I'm going to talk about that. I'm getting ahead of myself here. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, "There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it." How many times have you had people come to you and it's like, I've failed again, and it's worthless. It's hopeless. I'm done. I can't take it anymore. God is faithful. And this is a message that we can share, not just in relapse, but to those. This is what they need to hear. He has made a way of escape. There always is a way back, that ye may be able to bear whatever it is, temptations, trials, struggles. There is a way. Though no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start from now and make a brand new ending. How do we look at relapse? One, remember that they've been given tools to be overcomers. Now, I hope they've been given the tools. And that's we talked about earlier, we've been talking about all this time, that as long as you are being a faithful counselor and you are using scriptures and giving them tools, this is not just talk therapy, one of the catchy terms out there. It's not just talk therapy. We come in and we just talk about this thing, and I kind of just have the things to say to patch you back up and send you back out the door again, and on and we go. But no, we're looking at problems. We're looking at issues and heart issues and teaching them how to be overcomers. So if you have given them the tools, remember they have those. And that's something that you can rest in. And you can encourage them in. You know how. You have the scriptures. And we all have a Bible. And then prepare them for this potential. And this goes back to the begin with the end in mind. As you're working with someone, we should be preparing them for times like this. We all experience that in the Christian life, where we go through times of struggles and trials and issues. Are you prepared for that? And are you preparing your counselee for those times? Or is it when they get to that point and they go downhill, they just crash and they can't make it back? You probably get that. But are you teaching them how to come back? And again, I like to encourage this in our counselees, to my counselees, that every failure is an opportunity to learn. This gives a hope-based approach to failures. And I think it's such a struggle when your counselee comes in, it's like, I messed up again, and I'm struggling, and I just, when am I ever going to stop? What are we learning from each of these failures? Every failure is an opportunity to learn about this battle that we're involved in, this war, these patterns, these things that Satan is using to tempt you, to get you down. He knows you better than you know yourself, and he has created his own attack plans. Are you helping them to create their attack plans on how to be overcomers? Here's a couple resources that I think are very helpful when someone does relapse, or they're even, especially if they're in a support team, you're no longer working with them. Things that you can give to help that team aid in when relapse happens. Mark Shaw has a book called Relapse, and I don't know if all these are here. I didn't check on that. But and then The Walk of Repentance by Steve Gallagher. Those are two things. That The Walk of Repentance, I think, is a 24, 28-week study, and talking about walking through repentance, and very helpful. The last resource is the cross. And I think this is very important for us not to forget and not to lose sight of, and for our counselee to lose sight of. This is a place for more than just the unbeliever that you're working with. This is a place for us all. And I'll finish with this. Looking to redeem your guilt and your shame, hoping for a way to relieve the pain, meet me at the cross. Seeking shelter in the storm, frail and worn, fighting a battle you can't seem to win, longing for love that knows no end, meet me at the cross. Trapped in a cycle of doubt and fear, aching to know the comfort of peace, meet me at the cross. He makes all things new. He's waiting for you. Meet me at the cross. Gather at the cross. It's a compass for the lost. I'm just like you, so I'll be there too. Meet me at the cross. Though today it's an empty and solemn place, it's a representation of the deepest grace. There is not a piece of your story that is kept from his sight. Step out of the shadows and into the light. The foot of the cross is only the beginning, but it's also the start of a victorious ending. It's here we are part of the great exchange. His life for ours, no more guilt, shame, or pain. I was led to the cross some time ago. It's not a journey I took alone. There are many who go there day after day. The Lord himself only knows who will join you along the way. So meet me at the cross.